Usually we do what we started to do at Women Engaged every Friday around noon. We do a short little we do a FB Live program called You Ask, We Answer. So Women Engaged Answers. And we launched it during this voter engagement season because what so many things were happening in real time for the people that we work with under the COVID context. I mean, I know for you, like us, there was census, there was voter registration, voter engagement, then changing of primary dates and all the kinds of things people were inundated with. Um, and so we decided that, another layer will be us just getting on Facebook Live, and then we go again around 6:30ish on Instagram to give people really the highlights of the week so that they can be informed on what's happening on the ground.
Right.
And so I really appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah,
Um,
you got me out here. You know, I like to be funky fresh to impress, but I just got my Philly gear on today because you know
Absolutely.
that when it's called or it's going down in the city of sisterly affection and brotherly love.
Yes. And and this is I think a lot of people know this, but we've known each other for quite a minute, young lady.
I wish I could. I wish I was in the young categories, but you
you
did.
know?
We met so many years ago, almost 17 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You are known as the pre-founder of New Voices for Justice, as you harassed me into organizing the Black women and women of color to attend the March for Women's Lives back in 2004. And had it not been for you, we would not even be having this conversation. There would be no new voices. The reproductive justice movement would be a totally different place. But for us meeting all those years ago.
Wow.
Thank you
Wow.
for being on my journey personally and for what you helped to birth into the world that is now
Wow.
voices. And I think that it is only fitting that we get this opportunity to share in this moment today.
Wow. Ooh, Latasha already took it to church. Latasha already took it to church. She's preaching right now. Ooh, we.
This has been a long journey. It didn't just start. And through all
That's
of
right.
life twists and turns, what you go through in your uh, professional leaders, professional leadership, or personal development, or your
Right.
organizational journey, that there are people who have been there along the way, whether you see them or not, whether you know them or not. But
That's right.
part of my story and the story of New Voices and the story of this moment right now.
Mm.
We need to know that before we have this conversation.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Oh my
Depth
goodness.
of this conversation.
Well, I appreciate you and I thank you. What and let me say this, when Latasha and I met, we were little young things,
We was
and
young. We was pretty young things.
we was pretty young things, okay? Woo. And so, I mean, with big bold visions, with courage and audacity to say, you know, well, I'll just make my life be about Black women liberation, thriving, like, and no one is going to sway me from that. And that's who Latasha Mays is. I am, honored to always be considered as part of the history of New Voices. As a child born and raised in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with my father and my family in Philly, that what Latasha did was really bring for me, like, whoa, I have some peace about where I'm from because there is a Black woman who is taking care of the Black women that I love in the state I'm from. You know what I'm saying? And you have built really something that has moved not only across the state of Pennsylvania, but also into Ohio in
Yeah.
areas, that people don't understand that, we knew that there was going to be this kind of backlash and then back and forth. And you have stayed the test of time through it all. If you could just share with us about your journey of getting to, where you are now with such an amazing, robust organization. Um,
Wow. Thank you. I just hope that our work has meant change, concrete changes.
but and let me say this: when
So, and I hope it has meant transformation for the communities that we're in. But again, I'm Latasha D. Mays, and I have the distinct honor of being one of the founders of New Voices for Reproductive Justice,
right,
along with Becca Zayla and Nguni,
that's right,
Maria Truth, and Lois Tony McClendon, known as the Grand Dame of New Voices.
that's right.
And so back in 2004, we didn't see a political home for young women of color. And I'm from Philadelphia. I just think that needs to be known, especially on today. I literally was lived in Pittsburgh for 20 years and moved to Philadelphia, back to Philadelphia earlier this year, only to be met with pandemic and the ugly scourge of white supremacy that we've all been experiencing. But for many years, I was in Pittsburgh, and that's where we created New Voices for Reproductive Justice. People said, why would you create it in this kind of, post-steel era, Rust Belt,
Mhm.
like predominantly white metro, like one of the most white metro areas in the nation.
That's
Why
right.
we start a reproductive justice organization there? And our response is always, well, we can make it in Pittsburgh. We can make it anywhere. And that has proven to be true um, for these 17 years. So, um,
Mhm.
I went to Pitt. That's how I wound up in Pittsburgh. Just really have always had a social justice DNA from my mother, my maternal line, and it's the calling. It's the calling of my life. So um, that work, in some ways was rooted in my experience growing up in West Philadelphia.
Mhm.
Um, through high school, going to all white women's institution in Montgomery County. People probably know about Montgomery County now because it's on a suburb of of Philadelphia. To college, to Pitt, and being politicized there, and having the opportunity to begin to organize and to lead and speak about, the issues that impacts at that time young Black women the most. And so in looking, definitely wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. Everybody was leaving, but I was like, I'm going to stay. This is a place that I think is for me, that I think I could make a change. This is where I became a grown up, is what I say. And essentially, we were like, me and Becca Zayla, we were like, okay, well, there has to be something in the community that we can join that can help us to continue to build around social justice activism, reproductive rights. At the time, we didn't know the reproductive justice movement when we first started out. And we literally went to different organizations, and there was nothing
Mm.
for us in terms of a political home.
Mhm.
And so we entered the story. I had done reproductive rights organizing and was starting to get in the community around it. And people had identified me as a person who might be able to help organize women of color to go to this March for Women's Lives. First, I was like, "Who is this person reaching out to me? I don't know them like this. This is before Google, y'all. This
Okay.
he was on Hotmail, and it was like DSL was the type of internet you had back then. Just a step up from dial up, you know. Just like, who is this person? I don't know this person. But we met. It was like it didn't go even that well, the conversation. But there was a plan that the universe had greater than our interaction, and then we were able to come back together again, to make this march happen, and together with your support and Loretta Ross's support, we were able to organize mainly Black women, but also women of color in 40 days to go to this March for Women's Lives.
Yeah.
And when we got back on the bus, they said, what are we going to do? I'm like, I have no idea. We're going to just watch The Color Purple. We're going to get, my only job is to get you from DC back to Pittsburgh. And mind you, we were young. It was like, I think I was 22 at the time.
Yeah, you were like 22. And let me just say, let's take a second to shout out Loretta Ross.
Can we take a second? The great
let's
Loretta.
let's take a whole minute to shout out Loretta Ross and you know, the powerhouse that she is, and the path that she's paved again for us, and for so many who, you know, are claiming, you know, the excitement of this current moment. You know, Loretta, I worked for Loretta at the National Center for Human Rights Education as the Women's Human Rights Program Manager when you and I met. And, you know, I was working, Loretta did the work with the women that made up Sister Song. At the time, particularly the management circle, the mother management circle of Sister Song at the time, you know, who, and we need to shout out those women as well, you know, Luce and everybody. Like, I just think about, you know, I mean, you'll have to help me because the camera on, I can't think of everybody's name, but, you know, I think about all of them, days on, and all of them, and you know, and what they did was say to the predominantly white organizations that were leading the charge for pro-choice to say, well, you're not going to get people at this march, I mean, especially women of color, if you don't have a clear shift and transformation in your thinking about how people see and understand this issue.
Absolutely. I mean, this moment is not possible without Loretta Ross.
It's not possible.
And to have been on this journey with her too has been one of the greatest opportunities of my life, and really to work at the feet, you know, of you know, our foremothers who created it. Black women created reproductive justice, and that's said enough. So I always say it anytime I have the opportunity, and Loretta was one of those people. Tony
Brown
was one of those people. 10 other visionary Afro-futuristic leaders from across the nation who said we need something more. And just then, like now, we're not asking for something more. We've created something more. We're demanding more from what our democracy has to offer us.
Absolutely.
And so this journey of reproductive justice, our work in New Voices, our first actual work was a voter registration drive for young women of color, ages 18 to 30, I want to say. And that's when 30 seems so far off. I was like, that's the upper limit, y'all. We can't be getting into, you know, the 30s. And then it all of a sudden was 35. And we're like, we don't need no age range. But for us, that voter engagement has always been a part of the journey, but we didn't have the resources or tools. When I see the tools that are available and what we didn't have access to, what kind of resources, no one wanted to invest in.
That's right.
Black women, young Black women at that.
That's right.
This is for literally a decade, you know, there's this disbelief that Black women know the solutions to the things that we face in our lives, from funders or donors or whomever. But yet we persisted, and with nothing, we've made a way out of nothing, only to prove ourselves right about what we know our communities need, what our families need, and what we need ourselves. And that's where Trust Black Women comes from.
Yes.
Just for your listeners out there, if you don't know, Trust Black Women is a mantra from the reproductive justice movement. I see it used in a variety of places, but know the history, know where it came from. It came out of Black women's responses uh, to billboards that were meant to shame, blame, and vilify Black women and Black folks who sought abortion care. Let's just call it what it is. And so the response from Black women, Black reproductive justice movement leaders is trust Black women. And so it applies in so many areas of our lives. Know where trust Black women comes from. Shout out to Loretta, shout out to Monica and everybody. Monica, who is the current ED of Sister Song, Monica Simpson, know where it comes from. And that work, the work of reproductive justice comes from the South, which is incredible and I think is also overlooked. And those of us in the North, always want to look our nose down at the South, where this whole nation is the anchor and foundation of it is white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Not
yes,
the Mason-Dixon line.
That's right.
Your most liberal, progressive, radical bastions are all rooted in white supremacy and patriarchy. And so we turn our nose up at what happens in the South, because just 24 hours ago, they was like, Georgia messed it up, But meanwhile, one of our founders just posted what New York looks like when you get out of the city.
Yes. And yes, that's right.
Like, let's be clear about white supremacy is not limited to geography.
It sure isn't.
I think that's what this time is showing us, how we have, Black people don't have far to go. White people have far to go.
That's right.
In terms of dismantling white supremacy. It's actually their job. They created it. It's on them to dismantle it.
Absolutely.
That dismantling is through the exercise of our human rights, civil rights.
Right. That's right. And, and as someone who, left the North to come South for college, undergrad, Spelman College, shout out Spelman women. Okay, lead, Spelman women lead. We're proud of our Spelman sisters today. All of us who've been out here doing this work, we have a choice to change the world, and so we do it. But coming from Pennsylvania to the South, coming to Atlanta, and for so many of us, people of African descent who have been on this land for generations upon 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 generations, who have had to, literally move, to run, to fight, to move our families south to north, and then, north back south.
Right.
We know this move, and this move is this migration, this move back and forth has been about our lives. It's been about our lives. It's been about economic freedom. It's been about educational opportunities, employment opportunities. And so yes, I mean, there is there's been a few decades now of this move back south. And, let's not mistake, as you said, that we don't get to this moment if it wasn't for Black women, if it wasn't for Black people, if it wasn't for the young queer Black people who have made a home in these in the South. This is why we see what we see. And I will also argue that, especially in the South, there, the rich herstory of the civil rights movement, of the Black liberation movement, even Angela Davis is from Alabama. Okay, so let's keep it 100 when people want to talk about, the South and what kind of, courageousness comes from here. And that we have been seated, many of us who grew up North, our grandparents, our family, our great grandparents, whoever, are, Black Southern folks. Okay. And so, the South has always been a powerful place where we have done the important work to hold this democracy accountable. That happens here in the South.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add that, we have that tradition. We also have that tradition of our historically Black colleges and universities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the HBCUs are, the have, and what we know now, and what we've always known. And part of what Black folks did who moved north, and got the factory jobs and all those kinds of things, did what? They sent their money back home into the South to their family, that were, working the lands, and and those things, and keeping it going, and also to continue to fund our historically Black colleges and universities. We've always had a mindset of taking care of ourselves and our own, and not looking at us as some other kind of outward sort of standard or anything like that to justify our existence. I mean, that's just not who we are. We don't, so but yeah, so thanks for lifting that. I wanted to have us talk about, this moment, as 501c3 nonpartisan organizations that do this kind of work, which is integrated voter engagement work. We have a particular kind of way that we do it.
Yeah.
And that works, very well. And so if I'd love for you to share about like how what that looks like for you at New Voices.
Wow. Yes. So as I mentioned, New Voices, our work, our actual first work was voter engagement, no money, no dollars. I remember trying to get a little NAACP grant, and it never really materializing. So we would work every presidential election from 2004 up until 2012. We had some effort through our Voice Your Vote project to engage young women of color, young Black women around the presidential election. And that was really spurred by the 2000 presidential election. I was in college at Pitt, and that was my first presidential election. And the shenanigans that ensued, it just blew my mind. But what it was that really sparked, what was a spark for me around voter engagement, was how those Black women in Congress demanded, those results be challenged, and no one answered their call. I'll never forget sitting in my dorm room, but I knew in that moment that had to be a part of any work I was doing in community. Or that for me, personal involvement, community involvement, I knew that had to be part of the journey.
That's right.
So we had built, just a little something, I would say from like 2012, actually going back like maybe 2009 or 2012, we kind of had a little thing going, but nothing that was moving people, nothing that we could track our impact. But we did work with different organizations, build different coalitions. You're so young, and like the naivety actually helps you to do things that are pretty remarkable.
Yep.
You can't see maybe the challenges that are ahead of you. But bottom line is, our work, the little bit of work that we were doing was just like voter education, a little bit of voter registration, and we were only doing it in Pittsburgh. Just kind of like making information available for people, but we never had the resources to actually do anything of, on a large scale, to have a real operation. And that's where the Groundswell Fund comes in. Definitely want to shout out the Groundswell Fund and the leadership of Vanessa Daniel and the board of directors of which I served on up until the end of last year, that they are the largest funder of reproductive justice in the nation, and increasingly the largest funder of women of color, the leadership and organizing of women of color, Black women, trans women and folks, young folks. They get the vision. And so they understood that we had to merge our movement building work for reproductive justice with electoral politics.
Yeah. And Latasha, as you're responding, we have a question in the chat, and you can infuse this in what you're saying because it's powerful.
Okay.
What is actually, we use this language, but people want to know, what is integrated voter engagement, and how does that differ than what other groups do that are doing electoral politic type of work? Can you put that into your response? Yeah.
Yes. And so the Groundswell Fund, they had done a pilot with some other reproductive justice organizations around this concept of integrated voter engagement, which means that you are building in communities, you're building voting power in communities all year long. And that voting is one of the milestones for leadership and decision-making in your community. So if we think about how parties, political parties, we think about how even organizations, community organizations who campaign, whether they are C3s, which cannot advocate for or against candidates, but can advocate for certain issues, or C4s who can advocate for certain, certain candidates for or against them. But they often almost always come in 2 to 3 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks right before the election. They come to get your vote. They come to exploit the interests, needs, and concerns of your community. And where are they the day after the election? Nowhere. They're not interested in what you need now that they have been elected. And so parachuting in right before an election and immediately leaving communities that they have made promises to is what typically happens. Integrated voter engagement is the absolute opposite of that, which is to build leaders, to community organize, to advocate for policies, to identify issues in communities, and to work year round. And the other thing is you're working with people from communities to engage their neighbors, their family members, their co-workers in the work. So we're people who come from the communities that we're working with. And for us, a lot of folks have experience with incarceration.
That's right.
So it's the opportunity for them to get work experience, to have an employment opportunity that is actually impacting their own lives. I remember someone was incarcerated with us. They didn't know they could vote.
That's right. That's right.
And we helped them to understand that they could vote. And I remember driving them to go vote, and what that experience was. So it's our folks doing the work in our communities to change our communities for what we need, not what politicians need, not what candidates need, not what political parties need, not even what some organizations need, but what the actual community needs. And so voter engagement is year-round, is multifaceted. It is really about a journey, not one moment of any election, even though we use our voting power often, and for most of us in a nonpartisan way.
Right.
Move. So we're not coming to you representing any party. We're coming to you representing, for us, Black women voters ages 18 to 49 in Pennsylvania and Ohio who are less likely or not likely to vote.
Yes.
So we're going for super voters. We're going for people who have given up on the system that does not serve them.
Amen.
Hey, here's a way for you to use that system to your advantage for you, your family, and your community, and how to build that power, how to put them in leadership positions to make the decisions for their communities, whether they run for office themselves, whether they're leading, different boards or authorities or commissions in the city, or even in their own neighborhood.
No, that's great because I want to stay there for a moment. I want to stay there about, so right, I want to stay there about who like really naming who are the people that organizations like ours really center and celebrate. I like what you said about, it's not the super voter, so this is very powerful. And and to just put in there, when we started Women Engaged, and when I say we, Margaret Cardbo and I, who is an ancestor now, who is smiling upon us, and we have our ancestors who are holding us, and who are protecting us, and so we will name them and honor them. And when we started Women Engaged in 2014, we were both people who had worked um, in and out of social justice. I had worked in and out of reproductive justice work. Also had done, research as a feminist researcher, um, and what we knew in 2014. So it's part of what we were hearing from quote unquote progressive allies, and anyone who was not Black, was this kind of side conversation of like, well, yeah, I know that Black people aren't gonna vote like they did in '08 and 2012. They're not gonna do it. That was just a one-off. And I was like, and you sitting here at dinner with me having this kind of little side conversation in my ear. I don't want to hear what you are, just completely out of hand. So and these kinds of side conversations that, saw Black people who were voting as, that we were voting in a superficial way. That's what happened. And that and that we weren't going to see it again, and young people aren't going to come out again, and that's just what. And so we were like, well, if you are the ally, God save us. Because if where you begin is that, again, and it's a bad habit, and it's a habit, I don't know, I mean, and some other things that starts with blaming Black people, for any of our quote unquote wins or losses, but yet there's not an interest to do deep investment
Yes.
in the communities and honor what you have said you're going to do. Look, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay. I know what it was like. I was born after the mills closed. I looked in my uncles and in my family's eyes, people who were proud. My grandfather, proud union worker, proud, okay, and saw and knew that what we were faced with, I didn't know much as a baby, but I'm like, why everybody sad? You know, but the reality is that there wasn't that investment back. But yet we were expected to continue to do be, this base of support. And then and so what's so key about what you're talking about and what we knew here, with Women Engaged is that, no, there has to be deep, committed, resource, invested engagement in our communities with those primarily who have, like you said, are discouraged, who maybe haven't participated, who are, doing the best they can with what they have, because they have a voice as well and they have a purpose. And there are a number of Black women who are holding it all up, doing the best they can. If engaged, they're going to be, like leading the way, but we have to, they deserve the respect of knowing what they need and what we need and what our families need and what our communities need and deserve. And so it is powerful because this kind of nonpartisan integrated voter engagement type of work, it means that we are not beholden to anyone. We are beholden to our families, to our communities, to who we celebrate as Black women, femmes, girls, Black community, Black LGBTQ folks, our grandmothers, our mothers. And so it is powerful in that way, and it is what gets us to here. But I'm going to stop. I'm going to let you take it because we are in this very powerful moment with where so much of um, what it looks like to have ups and downs in this kind of work. But staying the course, even if others don't see the math adding up. How do you, along with being a Taurus, are you stubborn enough to stay the course in this work and continue to lift Black women?
It's mostly because I'm a Taurus. Tauruses unite. We get the job done. Tauruses get the job done, and we're stubborn and will not let it go. But at the end of the day, when I think about, you say, when we're going into communities, we become trusted messengers. Who better to talk to community members about what's going on in an election cycle than other community members who have the same to lose and to gain depending on the outcome of our elections. And trusted messenger is essential to integrated voter engagement. And that's something that we learned very early on. It's like no one knows their neighborhood better than the people who live there, and that's why we want people on our team who are from the communities that we're in. And I think it might be helpful to share just that none of this happens overnight. So we started out in 2014 as well in terms of our Voice Your Vote project, getting that long-term investment from the Groundswell Fund. I mean, up until this election cycle, we're 7 election cycles in, and we have had the support of the Groundswell Fund. And now we can say, wow, we knew we would be worth the investment, but now, I mean, we can demonstrate it very clearly what our impact has been and is in this moment. And so the work began. I remember our first thing we did was send out a mailer and a robocall. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And we reached a few thousand people. And that was great because people started to say, oh, we got your mailer. Oh, wow, I want to be involved in New Voices. Your mailer, it came in my mailbox. And then seeing that grow just in Pittsburgh to, okay, we're phone banking all year round. We're asking voters, registered voters about reproductive justice issues. And then, it started to take on a life of its own. Okay, now we need to hire people. So to go from that in the first year to then taking our success where, you hear the numbers, but if you're calling hundreds of people, that's really great. That's amazing work because we often are doing that with no resources. If you're calling thousands of people, even better. Like, wow, you really can have an impact in a city council race and some other local election. When you start calling tens of thousands of people, that's where the game begins to change, at least regionally. And so we had gotten to that point. We were calling all year round, had multiple campaigns. We were able to secure other funding in addition to the Groundswell funding because people were beginning to see, wow, like when the Voices reaches out to a Black woman voter, that over 70% of them will then go vote. But at the end of the day, we were able to replicate our success in Pittsburgh, into Cleveland, into Philadelphia by 2016. So that was only 2 years after. That's the third election cycle that we were able to expand our Voice Your Vote project. And then to increase our scale is what we have worked on for these last few years. So we work in 5 counties in Pennsylvania, and we work primarily in the Metro Cleveland area, but Northeast Ohio. And now to be able to sit here and say with you that we had outreach, probably, I would say, I don't have the numbers yet, but I would say we at least have outreached 500,000 times, 500,000 times voters in Pennsylvania and Ohio. And we did that in a pandemic. We did it in a COVID pandemic.
That's
so
right.
What would we have been able to do for a pandemic?
Right.
We still texted, we still messaged,
that's right.
Did the voter education.
Yes.
We still went out there during COVID-19 to voters and taking care packages in all 3.
Yes.
That's the work. So everybody, a candidate doesn't win on their own, a party doesn't win on their own, an issue doesn't win on its own. There's so many people that can have, we can for. And I think the conversation is important, and I hope we continue to do these conversations, is that as Black women, not just voting, but who are organizing that vote.
Right.
That's what's making a difference.
Right.
It's us. And it's right to invest in us. It's our organizations who say, with everything we have going on, we still want to make these calls. And the dedicated team members. And it's us, and it's the poll workers.
That's right.
You know, and it's those who are on the ballots who have white supremacists outside the Philadelphia Convention Center trying to hurt and harm them. It's all of us. Nobody wins on their own. No community wins because of one person.
That's right.
Is Black women have always made it happen, making it happen right now in this moment. And I can't tell you how proud and overjoyed and grateful I am to be a Black woman in this moment, and just happy to be here in this moment with you. They come to. So,
hello.
Yeah, I know you. I'm just happy to be here in this moment with you. They come to.
I think we're getting a little bit of background.
So,
hello.
Yeah, I know you.
Sorry. Hold on. Give me 1 second. All right. I think I was having a little bit of background. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Latasha, you still there? Oh, I think you're on mute and maybe stuck. I don't know. We will get this technology thing going. Let's see. Oh, did we cut out? Let's see. Hello? Hello? We'll get this technology thing going. Let's see. Oh, did we cut out? Oh, I'm okay. Latasha, hello? We'll get this technology thing going. Let's see. Oh, did we cut out? Oh, I'm okay. Latasha, hello? Well, it looks like we got to get, okay, I think we got to get Latasha back on. But I want to continue to, okay, it looks like we're back. Are we back?
We're back.
We're back.
Wax and poetic, and it was like,
okay.
Connected.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right.
Not sure you cut out, but I was just saying I was happy to be a Black woman, grateful, honored, overjoyed to be a Black woman in this moment, and to be in this moment with you and Women Engaged, knowing the journey that we've taken to organize Black women voters, Black voters in Pennsylvania and Georgia.
Well, all of what you're saying is, just gives me chills, because it is so much of the journey that we went on, together, and also, in our respective states. I think about, like I was saying before, we started Women Engaged literally, like I said, Margaret and I having this conversation about, like, we've got to make sure that in the mix, that, we continue to be in the mix of supporting, Black voters, Black women voters, post 20, you know, um, 2012, and making sure that each and every election people are connected to their voice and their vote, and feel confident when they go into the polls, understanding what's happening up and down the ballot, you know, so that, and so that the experience is one that's good. And we wanted to make sure that we follow people throughout the journey. To your point, some groups kind of parachute in at the last minute, or some may, only do, one aspect or the other. The integrated voter engagement model really is about, okay, how do you follow people all the way through, layer the communication, and support them being able to move from, maybe an inactive voter or a new voter to actually getting all the way to the polls and feeling really confident and excited, like they did the day they first registered to vote, when they go into the polls, and that's really what we seek to do and what we do well at Women Engaged and through our We Vote, We Rise program, is do that kind of work. And what we knew was that we were going to situate ourselves at the intersection of reproductive justice, Black women's human rights, and voter engagement very intentionally. So that when we are in spaces that are these civic engagement spaces, we are centering and lifting up the voices of Black women and putting Black women's Black women on the agenda, our issues on the agenda. And we were able to do that through our civic engagement table here in Georgia. I was, unapologetic about, running for our board, our civic engagement table board, and becoming the chair of our civic engagement table board as a Black woman, as someone who is steeped in reproductive justice and Black women's human rights and Black feminism, that, making sure to be in that position mattered, as we talked about how we're going to, center, those that deserve the resources and support to do their community work. And so it has been just a powerful experience. It has been, and so I am really humbled and honored. And, we talk about the leaders, and for me, like what you're saying, the leadership are the people on our teams and our canvassers, and the community leaders who, when they knock on the door to someone, they open the door because it's somebody that they know, and they're going to have the conversation with them. It's the deep investment in those folks. From day one, Women Engaged, we like you got support to seed our work through Groundswell Fund, but we worked a lot and hard with very, very little investment for a long time.
Please don't move quickly from that point.
That's right.
We have worked with nothing.
That's right. That's right.
We took the resources that were available to us. Okay, well, let me go to the Board of Election and get paper registration ballots. This is before fancy voter registration applications and websites. It was, we're going to take what we can do. We're going to organize with who we have, with what we have, to do the most that we could, and still have impact.
That's right.
Impact without a single solitary dollar. And that can't be stated enough. And I don't want to skip that point, because it's important to know how under-resourced and under-invested Black women's organizations are.
Yes.
Now.
And if we, and the bottom line is that if we didn't have the mothers that we have, if we didn't have, the solid foundation that we had, because it was not, the money has to be there. it never defined who we are.
Right.
Like in the sense of like my self-worth is somehow connected to.
No, no.
But what it is though is that you owe us, and this is
Oh,
you owe
yes.
us.
You
You owe us,
owe
and you know your fatal attempts to try to undermine or try to talk around or attempt to white splain or be you know underestimate our strategic prowess, our educational prowess, all of these things um you
question.
know is about you and not about us,
Exactly. And
because we're clear about who we are and whose we are. But I agree with you. We, to your point, we started with a very humble budget, with but with a very humble budget, and out the gate we were showing the kind of rate of return when it came to voter turnout, upwards of 65% voter turnout from our very first campaign,
right.
using a model that was about deep investment in community. From the beginning, the evidence was there. And the evidence has always been there. The data is clear. What we're talking about in terms of not resourcing is about racism. It's about white supremacy. It's about thinking that people who are not Black can speak better on our behalf than we can. This is about a whole other kind of thing when we talk about the ways in which this work ends up getting funded. At this and we continue with a steady drumbeat to do our work, and proud of our work, and then again, and just continuing, like I said, with that steady drumbeat. Hey, we keep on pressing on and pressing on. The thing that mattered to me the most as we continue to do our work in women engagement, in our We Vote We Rise program, was about the experience that people had when we knocked on their door, or when they heard from us on the phone or got some kind of message from us. What was that experience? And we continue to do those evaluations and fine tuning our communication and outreach, because that was important. People don't forget about what you say, but they remember how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you're in front of them, when they've had that experience. And so ours has been about how do we continue to make sure that people have those feel that excitement about participation,
Yeah.
and that they have an organization that has their back to support their efforts. I mean, this is what it's about. We are a little bit over our time. We are at the sort of the end of our hour, but I want to give you final words. Thank you again for doing this at such a short notice, but just what you want to say to the people, because we are bursting with so much our truth, that we hold, and just excitement about all the possibilities that we knew and know are there and are here. And just really, and I'll just say, just shout out to you, because I've watched and followed your career over the years and your work, and it's so genuine, it's so important, it's so stylish. And I'm just really proud of what you're doing.
Well, thank
So
you
over
so
to you.
much for creating this time for us to be together and to share our experiences. And again, this is not possible without you in my journey, my leadership journey, organization's journey. Not possible. It wouldn't. I'll probably be sitting somewhere else making a whole lot of money, had it not been for us, our paths and so many others, especially our founders, the Loretta Ross and our foremothers, the founders of reproductive justice, and our ancestors. My mother, who is an ancestor now, who just did not understand my decision to not take this very well-paying energy lobbyist job in Philadelphia. Instead, to go and pursue what I knew would be the work of my life, which is reproductive justice, a movement that found me and saved my life. And so you're a part of that. And what I want to say is I'll never forget, like, what happens is when you invest in Black women is amazing things thought to be impossible can happen. And I'll never forget the grant that you and Loretta gave to us. We had no bank account, we had nothing. We had to go to Alma Speed Fox at Freedom Unlimited in Pittsburgh and say, can you hold this money for us? Because we don't even really know what we're doing. But they have given us $1,600 to get Black women and women of color on this bus. And I'll never forget that, because 17 years later, we have become something I could never have even dreamed of for New Voices for Reproductive Justice. And when you invest in young Black women, young Black people, you get to do things that are incredible beyond measure. And what we live, how I live my life, how we live in New Voices, what we base our work and vision is from Nannie Helen Burroughs, who said we specialize in the wholly impossible.
That's right.
And so Black women, Black voters, Black people have specialized in the wholly impossible through a movement that was created by, for, and Black women and Indigenous women and women of color. We have specialized, we have achieved, we are achieving daily the impossible, because we're not even meant to be here.
That's right.
Can't even imagine us in the future, but we're already there.
We're already there.
I am from Pennsylvania to Georgia. We did that shit. And we need to know that. We need to receive it. We need to take credit for it. Don't be shy about the ways that we have moved for now almost decades to come to this moment. Shout out to Stacey Abrams and her vision, and all the Black women in Georgia and Pennsylvania, known and unknown. I'm shouting out Jasmine Sessoms that she can win here in Philadelphia, and Brittany Smalls, the PA director of Black Voters Matter here in Pennsylvania, and organizations in Allegheny County like Alliance for Police Accountability and One Hood and Take Action Mon Valley, who have turned, and I can't forget Veeam Pittsburgh, who have organized all year long in a COVID-19 global pandemic to still turn out the vote. Yeah. And so I'm grateful for this day. I'm amazed by this day. And it's just, it's everything I could, this life, this journey is beyond what I could have known or hoped for, and just blessed for, my maternal line, for my mother and my grandmother and my great grandmother, for my family, for my partner, for my friends, for Black reproductive justice. We all did that. You all made it possible for both me, and I know for you, and I'll just end it there.
Well, thank you, Latasha. I mean, that's perfect.
That's the benediction. That was just a benediction.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. That's word. And we are humbled and honored, and we are going to celebrate, absolutely. And the infrastructure here in Georgia that Black women have paved in this state to be able to do this kind of work and do it effectively. I just have to shout out the entire infrastructure. Yes. It is an amazing, dynamic, rich mix of rural Black women, Black women in our urban areas in this state, young, seasoned leaders, and I will say, I'm gonna shout out Spelman College and the Women's Research and Resource Center and Dr. Beverly Guy Sheftal and Mbahati Kaumba, who center Black women leadership in social justice. I'm gonna shout out Dean Spence in the Social Justice Fellows Program, like literally making, they are telling us that our intellectual work can be, so that our scholar activism, in quoting Mbahati Kaumba, us as scholar activists know that our work only begins at the critique.
Yeah.
It only starts at the critique. And so this is just, it is our, all of our day to celebrate. And so thank you for joining us.
Thank
And
you.
remember, everybody, we do You Ask, We Answers every Friday, and we will see you next week. And Lauren, you can head us out with some music.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.